board meeting. Last Wednesday, I emailed those numbers to everyone to review. So this is the same ordinance, it hasn't changed. I have answered whatever questions I've gotten from the board to this point. The attached ordinance is the ordinance authorizing the town to go forward with key government finance for the 2018 Water Series Enterprise Fund debt. The amount financed on the Series 2018 debt would be $1.8 million. Interest rate was at 3.4%. That was held through September, I want to say 24.
Okay.
It could change if it's after that date. The interest would amount to approximately $348,000 over a period of 10 years, making the total estimated payoff to $147,746. Annual debt payments would be approximately $215,000, which is within the approved amounts for the 2018 budget for capital improvement project fund for the town of Monument Water Enterprise Fund, taking all financing into account.
Okay, questions from the board?
I just had one question, and again, thank you for sending that information. Could you just qualify, because I'm probably reading this wrong, but based on what I read, there was a number attached to how many tap fees we required and what that equates to in the numbers in order to balance out where rates aren't going up, and I think it was in the $700,000 a year. Am I reading this incorrectly into the numbers? I left my folder sitting at my work desk. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine. I'm not sure which one you're looking at, so you can tell me.
All right, give me 30 seconds. I'll let other people have questions.
Okay.
Let me find it. Thank you so much. Okay. You know what I'm referring to?
No, I mean, I know
Okay,
it's on the other sheet.
thank you.
Other people have questions, I think.
I had a question about the tap fees as well, and I think when you showed that in 2018 with the 2018 budget, we would fit within that required amount that the lender is asking for that 125%. The concern that I saw was, that's where I think the 700,000 came, that's what I saw as well, is what if we don't have 700,000, you know, in 2019, you know, for the next 10 years, each year in tap fees, which at some point we're going to plateau, I would think. I would think 700,000 in tap fees for the next 10 years would put us beyond our maximum build out, but regardless, what happens if tap fees decline significantly, things like that?
Nice circle. And again, that balance the number. Thank you.
Okay, the $750,000, which was the number that Trustee Bornstein was talking about, was projections at the end of 2018, and that's not worst case scenario, that's what I think is going to happen. Worst case scenario would be 536. What you need annually is not the 750,000, but you need, let me find it here.
268.
I think it was
So you need
250,
260. And these are approximate numbers, obviously, because there's been no loan documents drawn. You would need 268,000 in addition to any net revenue. So your net revenue has to be at least, your bottom line has to be at least 268,000. I don't foresee any scenario in the next 10 years where the water fund wouldn't be able to generate a net revenue of 258,000. And then when the debt reserve worksheet that I showed you all, you would put 23,000 approximately a month into this debt reserve. And then twice a year you'd make your payments, and then at the end of the year there would be $53,750 left. So for the first 5 years, you would be putting that $53,000 in the debt reserve. At the end of 5 years, you would have a payment in reserves, so you wouldn't need to continue funding this debt reserve for the additional 25% of the payment. So you're actually looking at 5, not 10. And again, worst case scenario, we need 22,396, 2017's average, and all of this takes into consideration taking away sales tax contributions, because you can't, there's no sales tax, there's no property tax involved. This is purely the enterprise fund and purely off of rates and developer fees.
And what was that net rate for 2017, you said?
2017's monthly average net was $30,000, and what we need is 23.
How did it balance at the
Broad
end
numbers.
of the year? For
At the end of 2017, pardon me, our true net was, taking away the water contributions, was 363,000. So.
And what were the tap fees in 2017?
I have to look there. But we have, depending on what direction the board takes, we have a couple of larger developments. Planning has estimated, if everything was to go through, approximately 250 starts next year. And that's just parts of some of these developments, that's not the whole developments. So I just personally don't feel it's an issue in the past, well, we had 2 bonds, excuse me, which were like 30,000, 30-year bonds. The other one was 25-year bonds. And we used to pay out of the Water Enterprise Fund well over $500,000 a year. And we didn't struggle with that too much, and we certainly didn't have the building we've got going on right now. Even through that 08, 09, 10 period of time, even after 09, when we did pay cash for a project of $750,000, and it compromised the cash flow financials of the water fund. The water fund has several $1 million in assets, so on paper it looks good, but as far as cash flow is my big concern with this. I just don't see any scenario where they wouldn't be able to fund the note, making it necessary to raise water rates. I do think if you don't fund the note and this comes out of cash, I'm sorry, the 4 and 5 wells is almost done. That project is almost finished. We've spent out of cash already about $700,000 and a couple $100,000 to go. We have not done any work on the booster pump, which is the rest of the note. That work on the booster pump would not go forward this year at least. And the project is almost finished and it will be paid for, and that will just come straight out of cash. And my concern is if we get our cash that low again, then we're going to have to raise rates because of the cash flow situation, not because of the loan.
Or failure somewhere.
Yeah, it's at the end of our cash struggles with the Water Enterprise Fund, it owed the general fund close to $500,000. And it has caught that up in the last 4 to 5 years. I know in 16 when you all did the other boards did a rate increase, which you all were, most of you were part of. That helped to bring that around, and then we had a good year this year, and we had good tap fees this year.
Okay.
So.
Ms. Smith, you have quite an extensive history here and have a lot of knowledge of what's happened in the past and living by, learning from history. What happened in regards to well number 7 in the past, where a note like this wasn't approved, and what was the circumstance there?
We have had, obviously over the 13 years, several mixes of boards, and we've had boards that were very anti-debt, and which is a good thing to a degree. But right now, the water fund has no debt except for a small amount for the capital lease. In 2009, well 7 went down and had to be re-drilled, and that's one of our main wells, obviously, and it always happens right at summer, obviously, because that's what happens.
And that was the $700,000 you were
That was
talking about?
$700,000 that we paid out of cash. And from that point forward, and then you hit some, dry years, and you hit some hard times financially for the whole country, So it took 4 to 5 years for the water fund to recover and be operating in a positive cash flow, which when Kyle presented the audit, that's what he was saying, that both funds are cash flow healthy right now, and that's the first time in years that that's happened. And it looks real good, and I just would hate to lose that. But, and as you pointed out, Trustee Koopman, this is seriously backwards. This is not how this should have been done, but it's done, and there's no way to undo it. Under normal circumstances, I would think you would have the board approve the project, you'd get the financing in place, then you would approve the contract, and then you would go forward. And that didn't happen this way.
So since I'm kind of new here in this year, you're saying that a certain amount of this project has already been approved, and already you said there was 200,000 that's still to pay on. Is there any other on a project that's already been approved that we've already started
Wells
doing, but
4
we're
and
now
5.
trying to pay for it?
I'm sorry, Wells 4 and 5 was approved in January of this year
Okay.
by the board to proceed, and a contract was issued.
Okay. And that's for how much, approximately?
968 or something like that.
That was for
Well,
924,000.
That's what I was thinking.
And one of the reasons that we need to know about why we moved forward with that project was that was a project that at the time we thought we needed to improve the capacity of the town system before summer hit. But as workers' loss sometimes happens, they ran into delays. We had one change order. We had some problems with vendors. The project, actually the plant just became operational at the end of last week. So now we have that extra flow. Now we need to push this project in January to get it done as quick as possible. We didn't have time to go through a couple of months of what she's having to do now to get the financing for it. And that's what we explained back then. That's why the project got approved. It was in the budget. These aren't funds that weren't coming out of nowhere. They were in the budget, and the budget got approved.
Mhm.
It was budgeted to be funded.
So what's the risk if we don't actually maintain the enterprise fund? What is the risk to us if that were
If you
to
were
be depleted?
If you were to lose enterprise status in the water fund, there's state statute, you know, again, I'm not the lawyer here, but there is statute that says you will not contribute more than 10% sales tax or tax-based money into an enterprise fund, because an enterprise fund, by its very description, is self-sustaining. So that fund has to remain self-sustaining without tax.
Mhm.
We do put tax in there up to 9.78 something percent. But if you lost enterprise status, and let's assume this note isn't part of all this, because part of this note is you will maintain enterprise status. But if you lost enterprise status, the biggest bump that would happen would be that you could no longer borrow any funds to for infrastructure or for any projects. And it doesn't matter if your well went down or anything else. It would have to be by a vote of the people. Just like in the general fund, if you borrow money for a bond, it has to go to a vote at a regular election, or you could hold a special election at the cost of an election, solely our election at that point, unless we can combine with the county. You lose the ability to short-term borrow or borrow at all against it, because you're not an enterprise fund anymore. You're just like part of the general fund.
So if there were an emergency situation, that would be quite time-consuming and a little bit costly.
It would be, if we had a major infrastructure fail and needed right away to get up and running and going, and get financing to make the system viable, we wouldn't have an option of doing that. It would be illegal if we weren't an enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you.
And it's been an enterprise fund since 89. So, and they've never lost status.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the board?
I'd just like to touch on, I think, a recap of what I heard is, so being in the enterprise fund, it allows us the opportunity to utilize that enterprise to borrow money essentially against the system in emergencies and things like that.
Yes.
This particular one, the one that doesn't sit well with me, obviously it ties to our ability to dictate what those water rates are going to be because we have a lender directing what that cap is. I would imagine, as anybody with credit, you have a credit limit. The enterprise would have a particular limit that they would evaluate, or a lender would evaluate based on what we're asking, how much we're asking, things like that. This 1.8 million, whether on paper or not, is going to go against that limit. So this is taking a chunk out of our future ability should we get into that emergency scenario that Trustee Elliott was stating. So I don't necessarily think that it says, hey, we have to do this, otherwise we're going to risk our enterprise status and we're going to be in a bind if we get into an emergency situation. This debt accomplishes or really sets us up for the same possibility of failure.
There is a, as you say, there's a limit to what can be borrowed, and part of those documents in the ordinance states that this becomes a primary lien holder against the system, and you can't do debt without basically their approval and showing, because all of the banks actually that proposed on this loan looked at our financials, looked at the last 5 years of financials, looked at our potential growth, looked at our development, and before they would quote, they know, that part's fine. But it would constrain the total amount that you could encumber the system.
And going off of that a little bit more, as this board and future boards no doubt continue to move forward on a reusable and renewable plan here for water customers in the town of Monument, tacking on $2 million to that debt limit that we can have when we undoubtedly have some massive multi-million-dollar projects coming down the pipeline that we're essentially going to be in the same scenario and choice with. So I would think that we, as well as future boards, are going to need to be cautious of what debt we're bringing on. Is there a limit, as far as a time limit, on which we can borrow money for a specific project after that project is done?
You passed an ordinance in, I want to say June, saying we were going to borrow money sorry, I got a lot of paper.
Yeah.
That the town was going to borrow money and pay itself back out of those proceeds in cash spent on these projects. And so that was passed, and like I said, I believe it was in June. You ratified the lender in August, and I don't have that.
Yeah, my question is more as far as the timeline, as far as restrictions on when we could, if an emergency scenario like what Trustee Elliott suggested, crisis hits, we need to borrow money, we need it now, whatever the case may be, the project's done. So that's not going to be the crisis. It's going to be something else that's going to require cold hard cash. Where do we get it? How do we do it? Would we be restricted to, hey, we have to borrow for these projects within X time period, otherwise we can't borrow for these specific projects? Does that make sense?
What you passed, like I said, I believe it was back in June. I've got it in the background paper.
Ms. Smith, I think the question is, do we run
You
out?
have 18 months to borrow the money.
From when the project
From
is
when
initiated or
you
complete?
passed that resolution saying we will borrow. And quite honestly, that is a resolution that should pass every year, or an ordinance that passes that says you're going to borrow. If you need to borrow money, you will. But that we can talk about next year. It has passed for this year, and it was this board that passed it, I believe. One of the things to keep in mind is that any renewable water, get my terms straight here, is new water, i.e. falls into 2A.
You read
Here
my
we
mind
go.
for my
I know.
final question was, have we or can we get, I know this was a request several weeks back as far as some legal guidance on 2A specifically and the ability to utilize those funds, because based on the interpretation that I received from a town attorney of ours, it was
The bond attorney that we're working with, Tom Peltz of Kutat Rock, who's extremely familiar with all of this, in his opinion, that 2A is not, but I'll have to give you, I'm saying that's what his opinion is, I'd have to give you proof of his opinion. Money that is borrowed for the infrastructure for the west side of town is based on the revenues generated by the west side of town, period. That's in the enterprise fund. Renewable water, big water projects, purchases, pipeline, the new water tank, which is one of the things I think when we were talking about using 2A for the new water tank. Well, it's new water storage, but it's not new water, so that's when we got the opinion that said it would be new water storage. And I'm getting off track and I'm sorry. It's very complicated. But there is no sales tax and there is no property tax involved in funding the infrastructure for the west side of town through the Water Enterprise Fund. 2A is based on pure sales tax.
And I guess I lump it all into just saying 2A fund when in part I'm referring to the 89 ballot language that simply stated water system
1%.
improvements. So that's where it becomes cloudy for me, is that the 1989 ballot verbiage of water system improvements wasn't nullified. It didn't go away with the creation of the 2A account.
No, but you take 1% of that net sales tax and you take that amount of money, and out of that amount of money, and that's why the 2A fund was initially created. Probably just you, JD, you just hear that long ago, but because we were just literally generating too much money and we couldn't put it in the enterprise fund because of the sales tax restrictions. That's what started the debt service fund, and even with the debt service fund going to pay for water debt and the water enterprise fund paying for water debt, it was still generating huge amounts of money. And that's when they, the board passed the 2A initially to build this building, purchase the land and build this building, and then all funds going into this new water acquisition, storage, and delivery.
And I guess I'm not going to beat it anymore tonight. I mean, I guess I'd really like to dive into that, not only for this particular project, for others, especially knowing that A, the project's going to get completed, B, it's going to be paid for, C, we have a window, it sounds like, in which to execute something like this if it became an emergency or needed. It would make sense to me, understanding what's coming up in the future and understanding the potential and the variability of tap fees in the future. We need to explore everything before, at least I do, before making a commitment like this. I would love to get some legal in here to discuss specifically those ballot initiatives, the verbiage, and what, how much, when, where, why, all of that.
Is there any other questions from the board? This is a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the public. Would anybody like to speak for this ordinance? Ms. Swearinger.
Nancy Swearingen, 418 Shirley Road, Monmouth, 80132. Good evening. So I was looking through the ordinance. Interest rate looks good. I think that we've all lived through the problem of taking our cash and reducing the cash down to a limit that put the town in serious trouble. And I don't think that we want to do that again. Government entities run on loans all the time. That's how things keep moving along. And we have watched the town continue to steadily grow. The infrastructure doesn't get any work done to it. And this, to me, seems to be a good, reasonable way to fund water repairs that need to be done for the town and not put the town in any type of financial problem. So I don't understand why anybody would vote against this when we have all looked around, seen the shape of how our town is. We were given the presentation of the tank and the crisis that the tank is very close to having. And that was voted down, so I am left wondering, what will it take for the trustees to vote to get the town some infrastructure improvements? I don't understand the holdup on not voting for this. It seems like it meets all of the criteria, leaves the town in a good financial state, and allows us to move forward with the water infrastructure, which is what the majority of you ran on, is that you wanted to see our town move forward, get the water situation taken care of, repairs made, and every time something is presented to you, be it the tank, be it any repairs, be it this loan, there seems to be a lot of foot dragging and not willing to step up and do what you said you were going to do when you were elected to be a trustee, and that is to help take care of the water situation that we have here at Monument. This seems like a very good plan, and I'm hoping that all of the trustees will look at it as such and vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barney. Would anybody else like to speak for this ordinance? Seeing none, I will move to open it up to anyone who would like to speak against this item. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Motion on this ordinance.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 182018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Vandenhoek, will you take roll, please?
Trustee Bornstein?
I'm gonna abstain.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Trustee Koopman?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. That motion fails in a tie, 3-3.
For the record, that's not a list. You had an abstention. It was 3-2 abstention. You said
Which
it
acts
failed
as the right
3-3.
Okay, it still fails.
But not 3-3. So for the record, Ms. Vandenhoek, motion fails with a 3-2 and abstention.
Resolution number 272018, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument approving the service plan for Jackson Creek North Metropolitan District. Mr. Manning.
Hello. I have a messenger here. You have a memo from Lisa Corley, our past attorney, and it lists some of the criteria you need to look at and basically asks you to make a decision as to whether this proposal meets that criteria. Mr. Mike Taylor of CSI is here, and I've looked through his presentation, and I think everything that he has put before you is worth taking a look at and should answer a lot of your questions.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, trustees. As Larry indicated, my name is Mike Taylor. I represent the applicant, Creekside Developers. I'm accompanied by Mr. Patrick Bocek of the law firm Spencer Feen LLP, who will represent the district as legal counsel. The applicant is seeking approval of the proposed service plan of Jackson Creek North Metropolitan District in accordance with Colorado statute. As proposed, the district will provide street improvement services and safety protection services to the property within its boundaries, specifically in the form of the financing of a portion of the construction of local roads and associated safety controls. Okay. Let's give you the I sign. So as I indicated, it's proposed that this will provide street improvement services and safety protection services to the property within its boundaries, specifically in the form of the financing of a portion of the construction of local roads and associated safety controls. After initial construction and the expiration of the applicable warranty period, the local roads will be dedicated to the town to be maintained by Triview Metropolitan District. None of the services to be provided by this district will be provided by any of the surrounding jurisdictions, namely the town, the county, or Triview. Because the district will be wholly located within Triview's boundaries, it meets the definition of an overlapping special district under Colorado statute. But as such, it is an entity totally separate and distinct from Triview. The town has previously approved the formation of 3 separate overlapping special districts within Triview's boundaries, namely Triview number 2, number 3, and number 4, which despite the inclusion of Triview in their names, are also each separate and distinct from Triview. The services to be provided and the mill levies to be assessed by this proposed district are consistent with those of the existing overlapping districts, and the financial effect upon its residents will be similar to that of the existing overlapping districts on their respective residents. So to kind of lay out what I just said with regard to the relationship to Triview, the first exhibit we've got there is basically a depiction of the existing boundaries of the Triview Metropolitan District. The next one provides a depiction of the previously approved overlapping districts within the boundaries that I made reference to. Namely, as indicated on this exhibit, the district within green would be Triview number 2, which would cover the promontory point development. The magenta would be Triview number 4, which covers sanctuary point development. And the black boundary would be Triview number 3, which encompasses the property known as Home Place Ranch. The next one essentially depicts those existing overlapping districts and then what the proposed boundaries are of this proposed special district, Jackson Creek North Metropolitan District. And the last exhibit depicts what the proposed boundaries are on a larger scale of the proposed district. The district's proposed mill levies are 12 mills for debt service and 3 mills for operations for a maximum mill levy of 15 mills, which is equal to or less than the mill levies that are authorized for the existing overlapping special districts. The construction of the local roads and the safety controls will initially be funded by the developer and ultimately reimbursed in part by the district through the issuance of authorized debt upon the establishment of adequate assessed valuation and resulting property tax revenue for property within the district's boundaries, and only to the extent of the debt capacity that can be serviced by that tax revenue. The projected debt capacity of the district is currently $2,475,000, and the projected issuance date of the underlying debt is 2024. The maximum debt authorization of the district is $4 million. The applicant believes that the proposed service plan provides information sufficient to establish that the statutory requirements necessary for approval by this board have been met, as depicted on this exhibit, and therefore respectfully request the approval of the proposed service plan of Jackson Creek North Metropolitan District as submitted. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing item, even though it's a resolution. Would anybody from the public like to speak for this item? Seeing none, would anybody like to speak against this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a Motion or further discussion?
Just to clarify, what we're doing here tonight is, are we approving the creation of the special district, or simply the service plan presented to us?
Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. That's a great question. And tonight you would be approving the service plan. There is a separate process for the organization of the district through an election process.
So the organization of the district has not been created yet. That would come before us at a later date. I guess.
No, the district creation is a court process.
A court process.
And an election process.
Right. Okay, so this is simply stating that the service plan as presented is acceptable.
Correct. And the approval of the service plan then goes to the court.
Along with your application for creating a special district. Got it.
I have one question too, if that's okay. Does this plan include anything concerning water?
It does not.
It does not?
It does not.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, does the board know that in the past, whether when a district has been formed, whether the roads have been developed primarily and funded by the developer, or because it sounds to me what's happening here is they're and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're developing the roads and then you're charging a mill levy to get reimbursed for that development?
That would be correct.
But that 3 mil, sorry.
So at this point in time, and this relates to the relationship of this proposed district to Triview. Triview, as a metropolitan district, is no longer providing funding for local road improvements. And the other overlapping districts to which I referred and which were depicted in the exhibit have done a similar thing in that because Triview is not providing funding for those, they have performed or put in place an overlapping special district to add an additional mill levy on top to provide for local road construction for a portion of that. So essentially what we are asking to do is simply follow suit with what's been done previously within those boundaries and establish an overlapping district with related to future development.
So, okay, you're developing the roads and then you're saying you're turning it over to Triview to maintain the roads, but they're no longer funding that type of stuff? So once the roads are completed, they will be dedicated to the town, okay. Pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement between the town and Triview. As a part of that agreement, Triview then has the maintenance obligation for those roads. Okay.
So Triview has its mill levy in place. It derives revenue from that for maintenance of those roads, but it will not fund the initial construction of those roads.
Okay.
So Triview can handle then down the road taking on the maintenance of these additional roads as well?
Absolutely, and we in fact have entered into an agreement with them just simply to acknowledge that fact.
Okay.
What we didn't want was a situation where we get down the road and say, well, we haven't provided for any maintenance of these roads because that's your obligation under the IGA, but honestly, we don't have the ability to enforce the terms of the IGA because it's between the town and Triview. So we got an agreement in place with them where their board acknowledged and said, yeah, we acknowledge you would be a separate overlapping district, separate district from Triview. You will provide partial funding for the construction of those roads, and we acknowledge our obligation to then maintaining them. And again, if you think about it from the standpoint of they've got an existing 35 mills that are being assessed, and they're incurring none of the costs of the local road construction. So they have ample funds to provide for the maintenance of those roads.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 27-2018, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument, Colorado, approving the service plan for Jackson Creek North Metropolitan District.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Vanderhoek, will you please take roll?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. This brings us to our public comment section of the meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please do not repeat other people's comments. Do we have anybody who would like to make a comment? Ms. Swearingen.
Good evening again. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but 2 times this evening it has been brought up. Trustee Koopman wanted to hold off on voting on one thing because we don't have a town attorney. And then Pamela Smith made a comment later this evening that she couldn't comment on that because she's not the attorney. I would like to point out the irony that Mr. Koopman wanted to not be able to go into executive session because we don't have a town attorney. He is one of the key people that has made sure that our town attorney did not get a renewed contract, and that is why we do not have a town attorney. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a public comment? Seeing none. Sir?
Can this
Please.
comment be about anything?
Yes? Please step up, please.
Thank you.
And if you'll put down your name and address and state your name.
My name is Willie Watson. Thank you, I appreciate it. As I said, my name is Willie Watson. And I came to the town hall meeting this evening to discuss something that is going on here in the city. It's kind of a form of vigilantism that's going on here in the city. I panhandle for a living. And I have been panhandling off the outside of the Walmart there for almost 2 years. I don't leave trash or anything like that out there. I keep that area clean. But other people, on the other hand, they have brought out dog manure and dumped it on the aisle. They dumped a dead skunk on the aisle. They dumped 2 dead rabbits on the aisle out there. They also brought out a bunch of sludge and dumped it on the aisle. Now, everything, and my tires on my car have been cut. My automobile has been egged. And there's a website here. What is it called again?
Next Door.
Next Door, that all of these people are operating off of. And I must say that the police department has been very fair to me here, you know, and they followed the law. And these people have given the policemen a real hard time about this. Not only have they given the police a real hard time about it, they've given me a real hard time about it. I'm 72 years old, cannot work. Cannot work. My fingers have got trigger fingers, so I have no control over the dexterity in my hands. I've got both of my shoulders are messed up, and my back is messed up because I had a horse come down on me in 1994. I am a Vietnam veteran. I served in Vietnam in 1965 and 1966. And I joined the military. I did not get drafted. And when I joined the Marine Corps, I was actually only 16 years old. My mother had to sign for me. I was able to enter on my 17th birthday. So this is what I wanted to just bring to the attention. The police department is well aware of all the things that's going on here. You know, and I just think that the people need to understand that what I am doing is not illegal, according to the Supreme Court. You know, what I am doing is I'm going to a public place to ask the public for help. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I know you guys are limited on time, but that's why I came out this evening to address that problem that I'm having here in the town.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. This puts us at open session in regards to discussion of a personnel matter. We had some questions about the process of the interim manager. So I asked the representatives to come and address any questions we have. Mr. Zanella.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees, David Zelenak with HR Green. You may recall I was here, I guess back in July, explaining the possibility of HR Green providing some services for the town.
Okay. I don't think we expect you to discuss any negotiation ideas or anything. You gave us a pretty clear letter that was emailed to us on the 29th that covered most everything. Concerns, questions from the board?
I guess the question I have, there was multiple communications. It's my understanding, as we had certain staff members here working on this project. I just want to clarify that HR Green, as a company, and with the candidates that you proposed, are customized. This is a customized service that you typically offer municipalities.
Absolutely, yes.
And do you make that known to whatever staff members you're working with?
I believe we did in the letter, certainly.
It was the last line of the letter that we received on the 29th and in the meeting was, we would welcome the opportunity to sit down and discuss the town needs and how they may be able to be assistance.
And you extended an offer to meet with us, is that correct? To custom tailor a program to see or help identify what our needs are, and then essentially fine tune or custom tailor a program that met those needs?
I was hoping that was clear in our transmittal letter to the town.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any updates on candidates you had available?
Yes, sir. Two updates I'd like to share with the board. First off, you may recall interviewing Malcolm Fleming. He's presently on assignment to the city of Manitou Springs as their interim city manager in Manitou. And I'm not totally clear as to the timing, but Mr. Fleming has informed me that the incoming city manager into Manitou has a delay en route, which is unclear in terms of timing right now. So it is clear that he may not be available immediately, and it may be a number of weeks until the incoming Manitou manager gets there, and he can then be released from his assignment there to come here if desired. So there is a delay there. Secondly, you may also recall speaking with the Green Mountain Falls interim town manager there, Jason Wells. Jason, you may recall, is both the town's manager and is licensed by the Colorado Bar to practice law. Mr. Wells has informed the town there, given the circumstances and the information that we received, I believe about 2 weeks ago from the town here, that he'd prefer staying in Green Mountain Falls through the duration of their budget process. Now, he's only part-time there, so for the immediate future, he's available part-time until he gets through the Green Mountain Falls budget process. Interestingly, I couldn't help but notice that you folks may be in need of a town attorney here. He has offered his services. He is fully licensed by the Colorado Bar and comes highly regarded and recommended as a potential candidate for even an interim town attorney. It'd be available, actually says 14 or so hours a week is what is clearly he's available. I would like to also offer that in the interest of, to ensure there's no perception of conflicts of interest, since Triview's main district is one of our clients, that we would completely release Mr. Wells if he so desired. We do not perform or provide either law enforcement services or legal services. So that's beyond our scope of normal services. So it'd be essentially, he's yours for the asking without any relationship between us and HR Green, just to clarify full disclosure, so there'd be no perception of conflicts of interest. So he's yours if you'd like to negotiate with him in that capacity. I would suggest contact him, or I can even bridge that gap and offer him an introduction in that regard to you. So he's well qualified as both town attorney and town manager.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Solon.
Thank you.
Mr. Foreman.
How are y'all tonight?
Good. Mr. Foreman, we had a vote of 4-2 to move forward with your contract negotiations. We got semi-approval on your contract. Just like to offer the board some time to ask any questions of what their concerns are with moving forward with the contract.
I haven't seen a draft contract.
I haven't either.
We were sent the stipulations he was asking for to put in the contract.
Gotcha. So we have not received a draft contract yet.
No, we have not.
Gotcha.
So, I guess, what are the questions that are holding us back from moving forward on, do you have a disagreement with those stipulations?
Me specifically?
Well, it's the board members who have not yet responded.
Who hasn't responded? That would be a good question.
That would be Mr. Bornstein, or Trustee Bornstein, Trustee Koopman, and...
I provided feedback to Mr. Bishop
Okay.
regarding communications.
I did too.
Yeah.
Regarding the contract terms.
The
I guess.
the response for Mr. Foreman's requests.
Yes.
I did respond to that, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Right, he had asked for...
Thoughts, opinions, inclusions, additions, things like that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, I had also too, just some comments. He might have been tied up on something, he hasn't summarized that, Mr. Mayor.
And I might have missed that information.
He's been busy, so.
Apologies for the delay there.
It's okay. I understand. It's a tough decision. Should take your time.
Sorry, give me just a moment.
So we'd be asking for an update and proceed accordingly.
So, is anyone in objection to me making a motion that we go ahead and move forward with the contract?
There is no contract. That's the
No,
point.
putting it together.
I guess I'm
Finalizing
confused.
it.
That was my understanding as far, and again, forgive us for the dialogue here.
Yeah.
It was my understanding that Mr. Bishop was to collect input,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, recommendations to fine tune or put together a draft contract for us to review and alter, edit, and or direct to send out. That hasn't been done, and I know specific to that, I also have the request that we need to discuss specific criteria as far as milestones, things like that, for inclusion in the actual agreement, as far as, you know,
Right.
not
I
just
agree
the
with that.
basics, but
Yeah.
right. So I see it as a work in progress, which I believe progress is being made.
Ms. Smith, has Robert given any indication that he has a draft agreement, or?
He was working at the board's direction, the 4-2 direction from, I believe it was the last board meeting.
Right.
To go forward and negotiate and get terms from Mr. Foreman and get
We met
response
last
from the board. And,
I apologize.
no, you're fine. I just, you know, I don't want to speak for Robert, but I know he's worked very hard on it. I know that the vote was a 4-2 vote, and I don't know what input he's received. I know he's been at work, so, you know, if he's received things, he should have incorporated that into the contract. There is a lot of indecision about staff going forward, about the direction from the board for the staff to go forward and make changes to the contract, because the information the staff received was that the contract would not be approved. So it puts Robert in a very difficult position. So, and I'm not sure what negotiations that he and Mr. Foreman have talked about. I'm not sure what the board has sent him, because I have not been privy to that.
Unfortunately, Mr. Foreman, Robert had to leave on a family emergency.
Right.
His daughter got hurt.
Did you
Parking lot.
did you feel that? I mean, were you guys making progress with
Oh,
the?
yes. Yeah, there was really nothing that I couldn't agree to. You know,
Okay.
there was a couple of requests that I had made, and they were
Do you mind,
requests.
do you mind going over those requests real
Yeah, I
quick?
think in the contract it had said 3 months, and to be able to get here and make a change, life change and stuff like that, and get an apartment, I had originally requested 6, and I think he had come back and said that most people would agree to 4, and I said that's fine on that. And then I think there was some vacation days and stuff like that, so it was all minor stuff. The months were the big deal, and it was more or less, you know, I wanted to get here, get an apartment. My house is for sale right now. I've had 2 offers already, so it looks like it's going to sell pretty quickly.
And where's your house?
In Craig, Colorado. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, also too, I know, having a brief conversation with Mr. Bishop, I know in the past, and I think Ms. Smith, when we were in negotiations with the prior town manager, and the objective was to get a final draft, and it was somewhat expedited, and it didn't get to the board, and there was a lot of expectations that ended up not there, and things that the board didn't discuss. So I think he's working on it.
Okay.
It's news to me if someone says they're blocking it, but that's irrelevant. I mean, Robert's working on stuff, but again, I do agree. We want our candidate to be successful.
Yes.
And that's a no ifs, ands, and it is our responsibility to give milestones managed by objectives, whatever they are. So they have that. So I think that's something that the board needs to be doing yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think I responded to the milestones. I don't think I got that email.
No,
Okay.
we haven't gotten that far. That was simply the request that we need to include milestones.
And we're supposed to.
And that was
Well-
in my feedback email to Mr. Bishop.
See, I have September 5th that needs the addition of the contract for specific milestones. So I may have
So I guess I didn't do
miscommunicated.
the milestones.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, that's fine.
And those are very important for a city manager too.
Yes.
You know, for us to have to form that relationship and know exactly the path that we want to follow.
So can we make it a point that the board will move forward and submit any milestone ideas they have?
Yes.
Like I think we could get that within, what's tomorrow?
The next
Tuesday?
meeting?
So get that to Robert by Wednesday. I think that's realistic. We're not writing books, if that's fair.
But we need to give Robert a couple more days if he has an emergency.
Right,
We'll find out.
but I think that gives us all enough time, because we're not giving 2,000 milestones unless you want.
I want to extend that out a little bit.
Alright. My apologies, Mr. Foreman. I
No
had
problem.
some misunderstanding of what we were looking for. Thank you for joining us tonight. If there's no other questions. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think if we get those and based under the negotiation and it's drafted and submitted.
Board authorization items. Does town staff have any?
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you for your permission. We do have a request we'd like to put on the board authorization list. Our part-time officer, who used to be a full-time officer that went to another job, we've kept him on part-time, is asked to come back as a full-time officer. As an agency, we think that would be a great benefit. He already has all his equipment, all his training, he's kept up on everything, and it's just, he would be and all the officers want him back. I don't want to blow your head up, but he's been okay.
I think we need to reject that just based on it is Officer Green.
And I second.
It's been seconded. When next meeting, or are you just asking?
Well, if you go either direction, I mean, I would love for you to be able to come up with a decision tonight. If you can't, we can certainly discuss it at the next meeting. So, he's looking to come back, because he'd have to give his employer 2 weeks' notice also.
I don't know of the legalities of passing, telling Jake this is okay. I know in the budget, between, we looked at it this morning, between payroll and overtime, he's 0.07 over through August. However, I agree with Jake that Officer Green was a great addition, and everybody liked him. He has his uniforms, his training, I mean, it would be a shame to lose that. I think we could make adjustments in other areas of the police budget.
So,
I can increase it.
Do we have the capability, based on the board's opinion, just to move forward this evening?
We can make a motion for anything.
I mean, if it's not entirely legal, I don't know who's gonna tell you that.
Well, is it in the budget, or is it
Well,
now that we
Officer
just
Green's
swore?
He's never left the employment of the town. He's been working part-time since he left full-time employment. So it's not like we're bringing an officer, a new officer on that isn't already on the payroll. We're just going to be paying more than half-time to this officer.
So I could technically make a motion.
Technically, I suppose you could.
So I'd like to make a motion to reinstate Officer Green, effective with his
To full-time.
To full-time, effective with giving his 2-week leave on his current position.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Vanderhook?
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes?
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. Do we have any other board authorization items?
I just have one thing, Mr. Mayor. If we could get scheduled for the board to meet with the directors, Mr. Tharnish, our chief, and let's take 2 hours each in the morning, and let's go through their wants and needs, and let's look at the numbers, and then the board can determine, hey, what can we do, what can't we do, and what we will have to prioritize, obviously. But I think we should get this done before the month's over.
Okay.
You talked about that for a while. I mean, we need to.
Right, and I have been working on it.
Yeah.
Along those lines, when do we start the budget
We're
process?
supposed to start the first week in September.
The budget process is in process right now. I'm trying to get the document prepared. What we do is take the 2018, I had to input 2017's actual from the audit. Then we take 2018's budget, then we take 2018 through August, which is our last final month, and extrapolate out what we expect September through December, and then what can be expected 2018, and off of that, pull into 2019's budget with just blank lines for usually the town manager and the department heads sit down and go through and say, okay, I'm sorry, let me back this up. First you do the revenues, so you know how much money you have. And then you say, historically the police have utilized 25–30% of expenditures. Public Works has been X percent, so you take that percentage, apply it to revenues, and work, what do you need, what do you want, what's your staffing, what capital, which as a board we haven't done a capital improvement program, which needs to be done as well. But what's your base needs? What's your absolute, not wish list, but what's your needs?
But in the past, in all fairness, we've done a sliding scale. This is 17, 18, the numbers plus 2% minus, and I think this year it's very important not to look at what's on paper. We know what numbers are available and what revenue's coming in, but to hear Mr. Thornish, and look, he's got a list of 20, but I know he's got his top 5, just like the chief does. And when you hear, they're salespeople, because in the past years, and I will say, there was involvement with the board, and then it dissipated, and then it was to the point, email something in if you want to see a change. And the board's job is to direct what's priority for the town and the citizens. That's our job.
Yep.
And as far as our internals is to implement. And I think we have a great opportunity because the interim town manager, coming new, doesn't know the town, doesn't know the wants and the needs. They will learn. But we got to hear from these guys. You know, it's based on that, and everything's a priority.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that we can't spend more money than we generate.
I understand that.
Hold on. I think we were waiting for the projections just for that reason, so we don't promise the chief a helicopter and it turns out to be a $500 helicopter.
You know what? I agree with
get
you.
a drone.
I agree with you.
I told the mayor that if he wants to schedule these meetings, and obviously police and public works, streets and parks, public works, water, which are actually 3 meetings, or 1 meeting with Tom that will go a little bit longer. And you also have admin and planning as well.
Right.
But if you want to schedule those before the end of the month, I'm working diligently to get the budget document done so you have something you can work off of, so the department heads understand. They understand the process.
Yeah, I just think it'll be valuable because in the prior, we've gone through this and then you shared what we got. I think right now we need to see what their visions, what they need. We have that baseline, here's our total number, and then the board has to talk, and then we decide. We decide because I think we've spent too much time on, well, if we pull this here and we take this here, and we can't do that here. We can't. I mean, the board has to take ownership. Everybody here was elected to represent the folks, so we have to be responsible with the money, just not just go 10%. There's got to be a new process this year.
What is?
These guys are the guys that have to share the information, or gals.
Let's just plan. Is the 24th possible? The evening, it's a Monday, it would be next Monday evening.
Is this October? Are we talking
September.
Oh.
The 24th would be next Monday evening, September.
I can do it.
September 24th.
And by suggestion, for that, we would just be doing these 2 departments right now.
Yeah, we could start with,
Yeah,
do you want
This
to
would be
start with
labeled
just
as
one?
Well,
Workshop?
why don't we do that and do Mr. Thornish and do the chief?
Okay.
As ensure the workshop is broadcast for the public who may not be able to attend.
Okay.
Ms. Smith, would it be possible for the department heads to also provide us with the risk assessment of just very basic risk assessment if we weren't to move forward with their priority number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or et cetera?
So how
Thank
about
you.
October 1st?
We have a board meeting October 1st.
Yes.
So the
So-
24th, what time are you saying, Mr. Mayor?
I would do like we do our special meetings, 6 or 6:30.
Okay.
Even though it's a workshop.
I agree.
Does that,
No, I think that's good.
does the 24th work for everyone?
6
6 or
o'clock?
6:30.
How about 6?
Let's shoot for
6
6.
o'clock? They can draw us.
Nodding on that, or do
Yes.
we
I have no
need to
idea.
poll or-
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Um,
Any other board authorizations?
To Ms. Smith, I've been asking for months, but collectively the board acted on it recently. Can you give us an update on our attorney RFQ process that we posted out there for a town attorney?
The RFQ went out as indicated to about a dozen firms, and I've gotten 2 back that are not interested for different reasons. I've gotten 2 that have said they're responding. The RFP is due this Friday by 5 p.m. Everything I get back I will forward to the board to review, and then, sorry, this is all the debt stuff, I'm trying to find the RFQs.
Pam, do we have the capability if, in this duration, until we put somebody in place, if we needed someone, because we know we have executive sessions, et cetera, that we could get someone from SRSA to come in?
We can ask, yes, if you want someone before this process.
Or there might be other options, I'm just, so that it doesn't hold us back.
Yeah, I can check with.
You can ask for Mr. Wells, he was just,
I
he
can
gave us
check
15
with
hours.
Tammy, and or, cause Marnie's been assigned to us before, I don't know what her availability is, but
I don't think that would be a
I
problem.
can check if you want to see either for, I don't know that it'd be necessary for the workshop, but for the next meeting, for the October 1st meeting. The selection process that was in the RFQ that you all had looked over was Friday, September 21st at 5 p.m. is the deadline for submittal from the attorneys. October 1st is a town board meeting, and the board would decide on the finalists at that time and set up interviews. And October 15th, we would do the interviews, and the board would make a decision at that meeting if possible for the person to start basically at this first meeting in November.
Oh, that sounds good. I appreciate the update. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Is the board interested in extending that RFQ to Mr. Wells?
Absolutely. I don't think it would hurt at all.
Okay.
If he's interested.
Could you?
I have his email. So.
Okay.
And then lastly, only other board authorization item, I would like to see some sort of legal opinion and interaction and engagement to discuss past water tax ballots and funds to a fund 1989 ballot language. The money that we're collecting and how we can spend it.
Okay, you want to know?
I want someone to come. I mean, we've had Bob Crossett come in the past. We've
I
had,
don't know that Bob's actually the right person for this particular one. This might be more of a Tom Hills issue. I did send information to the board.
and I'm not saying specific to
About that
this
1%
loan.
and how it was split.
I'm
No,
just.
no, I'm not talking about this loan. I'm talking about the 1% from 1989 forward. And I had sent the board, you to be inclusive in that, a couple of times, how that 1% goes. And if you look in the audit and the budget on the sales tax, and it's something that you'll be given with the budget presentations workshops as well, you'll see it's 66.67, or basically 66.7% of the available sales tax is there for the general fund. The 1% or the 33.3% is divided between Water Enterprise Fund debt, the 2A fund, and the sales tax that goes into the water enterprise fund, so it's all water related. But the easiest sheet to see that on is this sales tax revenue sheet that breaks it down. It's also in the sales tax charts that I actually have done. We've gotten July's and there's a 2-month lag, which makes this kind of a difficult process. But I could shoot you out those charts tonight.
I think I have the ones that you're referencing, and my concern isn't necessarily the dollar amounts, it's about our authority and on how to spend
More
that
about
money.
what we can spend two-way money on.
Correct. What we can spend that money on.
Well, the one.
Right. So that's really where my questions lie, in the analysis of the specific ballot language, what changed, what didn't change, what went away, what stayed.
So we're really talking about the 1989 ballot language as well as
into it, because the 2A
as well as the 2A
references, well, in the latter, the ballot language for the 2A references the 89 tax.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand, but I do see it as different.
I could ask Mr. Peltz about his availability if the board wants me to.
And he is
He's bond counsel and on water and general fund, but his firm has specific knowledge on. They actually helped draft the 2A question. I mean, so you should have a pretty good idea of.
And who drafted the 89 language? Do we know? That was
somebody on the back of a napkin.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, more or less, and we can communicate or at later meetings to fine tune and get, I guess, exactly what we're looking for. I want someone to come and we can talk and engage and have dialogue. And
that I'll check with his availability if that's what you all would like to see.
Sure.
You can check his availability.
Okay. Are you shaking your head, Jordan? I'll check with him and let you all know when he's available.
Okay. Any other board authorization? Board comments?
With 10-5, we did the
I'm sorry.
discussion of the invoices, Ms. Clark.
Yes, I would like to consider going on record stating that I will not approve any Forest Grant invoices until after I've had the ability to review the auditor flagged invoices for this vendor. And I'm very, very concerned, would like to see if we could get some RFQs for other vendors that do this same, that could do the same job for us as a consideration until such review of those invoices passes muster, since they didn't pass the muster of the auditor.
I would respectfully disagree with your opinion, but I have told you I'm trying to get these invoices together. I'm also trying to get the budget together. I'm also trying to manage the town, despite what some people may think. I have pulled a lot of the Forest Grant invoices.
Are we looking for specific invoices?
The auditor flagged invoices.
The auditor flagged, I think there were 3 to 4 specific invoices. I'll let you talk in a sec. 3 to 4 specific invoices that got submitted separately and didn't come in under checks over 5 because we were doing invoices over 5. And Forest Grant's invoices were under 5. And the auditor thought that was inappropriate, so he suggested that we do checks over 5, not invoices, which would change. I have the auditors, the Forest Grant invoices the auditor was worried about. What you've requested, Lori, has been, Trustee Clark, has been invoices for the past several years, which I've been trying to get together and put together. And as I've told you, they're in off-site storage, and I also have some in my office, which I've been looking for, but I moved offices twice since then.
So have you got...
trying to find the folder of those invoices, but if you specifically just want the invoices from the audit.
Yeah, if I could get started with just those 4, that would be absolutely terrific.
That is fine. We can do that. I'll pull out my audit files and find those invoices, I can give you all the Forsgren invoices. I did give you an accounting of what we had paid Forsgren in the last 2 years. Now, as far as other people that do that and not paying for an invoice that's here, valid and proper, I'll let Mr. Thornish address that.
Yes, the invoice that Trustee Clark, you're questioning in consent agenda is for work performed on the Well Front 5 project. It was for $9,308. Keep in mind, this is for work that was already performed. When you go through this process of approving checks over $5,000, it used to be invoices, but now it's checks, you're approving that the town to pay those out, but the work has already been performed. What I worry about is if you don't approve an invoice for work that's already been performed, that puts the town in a highly liable position to not pay someone for work that's already been performed on a contract that was approved by this board.
I understand, Mr. Tharnish, and as soon as I get to see those invoices, I'd be happy to, I will disapprove, and I'm only one vote.
So you're saying you'll already disapprove without looking at it?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Nor am I addressing you.
You are out of order. No, you are.
I believe I'm not the only one that, requested to see these invoices.
Trustee Bornstein said he'd like to see them as well. And I'm not ignoring you. I know you have some concerns about fake invoices or something along those lines, but they're all valid invoices, the way they were presented to the board. The auditor had a problem with.
Yes.
I will do my best to get the invoices to you. I do not think you should hold up the payment of this current invoice. And if you go back through the checks over 5 or the invoices over 5 from 2017, there are a lot of Forsgren invoices that the board already saw. Obviously not you, you two on the end, but the rest of the board has already seen Forsgren invoices. The board's also approved the engineering contracts for 4 firms? 5 firms. So there are 5 engineering firms that do the work. And if you were to go back to 2015 and look at what used to be Nolte, which is now NV5, there was a lot of the same discussion around Nolte at the time, which was very uncomfortable for the current mayor because he worked for Nolte, but not the current mayor, but the mayor at that time. Anyway, that when you're working on a specific project, you tend to get a lot of engineering invoices from one particular firm because that is the firm that specializes in that work. Forsgren has been doing all of the water work ever since before the new board was seated. The board just prior to that with Colonel and at some point Jeff Smith was on there, and that board, and I just lost my train of thought, I so apologize.
It's getting
Okay,
late.
so do we have,
I will pull the invoices. Oh, that board had a lot of concerns about how much money we were spending specifically with Nolte versus the other engineers that are approved. First of the year, the board approves engineering contracts with 4 to 5 different firms so that Mr. Tharnish can go forward and get some work done and make some progress. If you're working on specific projects like water, I mean, we rewrote that water master plan, my gosh, 2 to 3 times. I mean, enforcement was integral on that. That's a lot of those invoices. Any water project, he's been the engineer. The company's been the engineer on the water projects, because if you use one specific engineer that's doing that work, it's like using the same auditor. It's cheaper because they're familiar with the work. And I don't know of the other engineering firms, if anyone's as qualified as Forsgren to do water engineering, other than it being more expensive. I mean, that's actually Mr. Tharnish's area. I will get what the auditor, the 4 invoices the auditor was talking about. I'll get you the invoices for the last 2 years as soon as I have time.
can you send
And
A lot
until
of those
then, and
invoices
until
have already
then,
been reviewed by a board.
and until then, I won't approve of any of them until.
I can appreciate your position.
And again, I'm only one person, but I don't approve of anything that has a vendor that has come underneath the radar like that for 4 invoices. And I would actually like to see a change to that we see all the invoices and all the checks under 5,000.
I would not like that much.
No,
Yeah,
that would
I
be a
have-
lot of paperwork.
That would be ridiculous.
Maybe so, but that's what I feel. I don't feel like I can
Anytime-
give any confidence to anything until I have some kind of verification
I
that
have
these are
offered
all.
on several
I'm
occasions.
sorry, I'm still talking.
I know, but I have offered for you to come into my office
Pam.
and I will go through every single
I'm not
detail
interested.
of everything.
Thank you.
And you have refused.
Ms. Smith, Trustee Clark, will you finish your comment?
Thank you. I just don't have I don't feel confident in these invoices, and I've been very patiently waiting for them. And I understand that you don't have time, maybe you can delegate it. If not, I just don't feel like I can give my seal of approval on anything. I understand what Mr. Tharnish was saying as far as liability and work already performed, and I'm sure that I am only one vote. If everyone feels the same way, those invoices can be approved. But I myself don't want to give my stamp of approval on it. So I'd like to go on record stating that.
Okay. Ms. Smith, will you get those 4 invoices
I will.
to the board quickly? And then I understand I don't necessarily agree with spending a bunch of staff time finding old invoices. It doesn't change anything about them.
It doesn't. I think it. I mean, if I may comment, I know everyone else has. I appreciate both concerns. Mr. Tharnish, I appreciate the extra detail on some of those invoices, and I think if trustees, or at least several trustees, have concerns with a particular vendor, perhaps a little bit more detail on the invoices coming through would give peace of mind, to highlight exactly what work was done. I also appreciate the concern that was brought to the attention, and the immediate response I had was, yes, in a small batch, in a small sample, he caught 4. He didn't go back and review to see how many more like that there was. And as a member of a previous board who specifically addressed this topic and the vulnerabilities and kind of the backwardsness of the process of the 5,000 or more limit, I appreciate on many issues, and not just this particular vendor, doing due diligence to give peace of mind knowing that everything is on the up and up. And I'm not saying that it's not, but I also value time and respect that, and you have many hats that you're wearing, and I don't know if delegation is appropriate or what. But I just wanted to, on the record, state I see both ways. Perhaps a little bit more detail with this particular vendor, or any, as far as I'm concerned. Knowledge is not bad. Dialogue is not bad. Making sure everybody is comfortable is not a bad thing. And to me, I see that as part of our duty up there, regardless of if it means we're going back a couple years to look at things. For 2.5 years now, I've addressed the 2A money and the ballot language and different legal opinions on what exactly it means, and I'm no better off now, and we're no better off now than where we were when I started looking into it before I got elected. So that's important things. Is it our priority? I don't know, but it's important to look at everything comprehensively, in my opinion.
And I have not withheld information. As I said, I have made the offer to Trustee Clark. I've made the offer to all the trustees. I know that Trustee Medlicott came in and met with Mr. Tharnish and I several times about invoices, about process, about the budget, about how things work. I think it would be very helpful for Trustee Clark to do the same, because you do have a lot of questions, and I respect the fact that you don't want to approve this. I'm not saying or trying to bully you into approving it. I'm saying if you really don't understand the process and what's going on, come in and sit down and let us go through it with you so you do understand it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Ms. Smith, just to clarify, and you were really good, because I wasn't looking for invoices. You had sent out, I think, to all the trustees, just kind of a sliding couple of years before Forest Green.
Mhm.
And you said that.
But those were the invoices, those weren't the physical
Well,
invoices, that was
and-
just the
and
vendor.
that was curious, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't, so, thank you.
But I will get the invoices
No, well, that's,
to the full board.
yeah, well, thank you for doing it, because that's
Thank you.
what I was
But
interested in,
that's-
so.
Yeah, but you're going to find that happens with particular engineers. I think the worst thing that I found when I first came to work here, because I didn't work for government before, and that's basically why I got hired, because I came from business, not government. I was like, why are we spending so much money on engineering? Why are we spending $250,000 looking at a project before we even do a project? And the answer is because you're a municipal government and you have to be sure that it's right, or you're incredibly liable, and that's part of this. I will
Okay.
get you the invoices that the auditor was talking about right away. I will do my best to get you the invoices from the last couple of years for Forest Green that support what was sent out from the vendor file. And not just the board, but any citizen can come in at any time and, please make an appointment, but come in, and I'm happy to go over the process, the invoices, anything we pay, anything we don't pay, and what that looks like so people can understand. I've always had an open door for anybody that wanted to come in and sit down and discuss this.
Okay, is there any further comments about the Forest Green invoice that is in front of us today? Is there any reason to hold this particular invoice up?
I don't get my helicopter involved.
What's that?
Do you need to make a
My
motion?
helicopter involved in it.
Trustee
I'll
Courtney,
take
what-
the
No, I just say no.
No,
Do I need
I'd
to make
say
a
we
motion, or we
could
just get
vote to
agreement?
approve it.
Yeah, let's make a motion to approve that particular invoice.
I'll make a motion to approve the Forest Green invoice for $9,308.10 so that the town can proceed with payment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Vanderhoek?
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
No.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. That motion passes 5-1. Board comments. Do we have any board comments?
I just want to say, good to see two trustee candidates here. Are you looking forward to joining us here in November? So,
Most definitely.
good to see y'all here.
I hope we expedite the process with getting the contract done for their interim manager and move forward.
Okay.
All of us.
Any other board comments?
I was gonna motion to adjourn.
Go for it.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have all in favor?
Aye.
Is this mine? Must be mine.
Have a wonderful evening. It's bedtime.
How you doing?
Oh, we still got a few hours to do.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Yeah, right. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Wilson, I have a few questions. I don't know if you could clarify for me with regards to the letter loan. There are a few numbers. I just want to make sure I understand what those numbers are.
6 years ago.
In regards to $750,000 that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh, well, shoot. Okay, wait. So who can speak to me? She just said that only the town attorney can speak to me.
Well, if it's public information, I can clarify it for you.
Okay.
I can't. That's more directed towards opinions.
Okay. So for fact checking then, so there's mentioned $750,000 being generated in tap fees. is that like it's $750,000 a year going into the water fund? Or?
Let me see.
Well, no, I wasn't sure how to bring it up.
That's excellent.
Do you have that sheet?
Sheet that you put in March, do you want that?
On the, yeah.
You're around.
So that's just our projected
Amount for being generated in tap fees that would be going
in
into
every.
the water fund.
Now that looks like everything.
Try to get some of the same.